From the Post-Millennial, once again. Pro-Palestinian agitators block traffic at Chicago O'Hare Airport to protest Boeing U.S. funding of war in Gaza. But it wasn't just in Chicago. It was all over the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in a coordinated effort, it would seem, far left, pro-Palestine protesters, and even many pro-Hamas, yes, the left is going to say, no, you can't say, literally screaming death to America at these protests. You have a coordinated effort to shut down, to damage in some way economics. Maybe they don't intentionally, these people aren't thinking like I'm going to hurt the economy. But I think what was it? Like the Golden Gate was 5 hours backed up in both directions.
Yeah, there was the Golden Gate. There
Brooklyn
was
Bridge.
Some issues on the
I think
Brooklyn
Seattle,
Bridge.
SeaTac as well.
Yeah, there was an issue also in a bridge in Newburgh, I think just north of New York City, a little ways up the Hudson. Yeah, and this is something that activists are planning for the whole week. Shut it down for Gaza for the whole week.
So it's kind of wild to me that Iran launches 300 drones and missiles at Israel, and then the far left immediately runs out in support of or in opposition to Israel.
Yeah, but
that doesn't surprise me at all. That's the status quo of the left culture for years now.
It's just sort of the mask is no longer on their faces.
Well, it's interesting. Maybe it varies by city, and you mentioned that there might be some foreign funding for this, but I can tell you in the Bay Area, there's no need for foreign funding for this kind of protest. There are rent-a-mob losers, and I swear, if you drilled in with a drone on who was there, it's the same people who were there for Occupy Wall Street. It's the same people who were there for Black Lives Matter. It's the same people who were there for whatever cause du jour of the left.
Trans women are women.
They're Chinese. They're they're all kinds of rent-a-mob people. So I think that's what it is in the Bay Area. There's just a mob of just malcontents who someone pays a small amount of money to show up for any given left-wing cause.
We call them the tourists. That's what we called them during Occupy, because we noticed this strange pattern of the same organizers weren't just showing up all over the country, but they were in Spain, they were in Turkey, and they were in China.
Right.
And so we started saying, yeah, how does that hippie anarchist guy sleeping in a park have money to go to Turkey? Yeah. And they were in Turkey for quite some time.
When I sued Antifa over attacking our client Andy No, some of the characters who were involved in the mob that attacked him showed up fomenting Antifa riots in other parts of the country. They were clearly well-funded, not ragtag, not from the heart. This is a underground militia attacking Americans all over the country.
So a couple weeks ago, I was talking about with the illegal immigrants storming the border and attacking National Guardsmen. I fear that we are getting to the point where conservatives finally break confidence in government. I would argue that conservatives are the only group of people that are actually maintaining the U.S. government right now in that they have confidence in it. The far left completely disregards it. Default liberals march in lockstep with the leftist activists, whether they know it or don't, and their state governments, which are defying federal law, allowing criminal aliens to invade the border. Then you have conservatives who are saying, yes, sir, thank you, sir, back the blue. Oh, that dang old government. Meanwhile, Antifa firebombs federal buildings, and there's mostly no response. I mean, you look at January 6th, insanity. You look at May 29th, nothing. You look at Seattle, you look at the takeover of these cities, nothing. So my fear is that with these attacks on the border, you get to the point where people on the right start saying, it's not an issue of attacking federal buildings or storming the gates. It's an issue of there's no government anymore.
Right.
Law enforcement is illegitimate. They'll arrest you for fake reasons. They're basically clown costumes at this point. There's no respect for it. My fear is that we get to the point where confidence in government is shattered in the minds of the right. And thus, though it would be in a different way, the right begins to act in a certain way like Antifa in disregard for government authority.
Well, I don't know how long it's going to take to reach that point. I hope never. But I will tell you that this week's debate over reauthorization of 702 is exactly that. You see a very deep schism in the right on this issue. And I've been tweeting about it because I'm more on the libertarian side on these issues. I thought the Patriot Act was a huge mistake, and it was. And today, conservatives are falling hook, line, and sinker. The conservatives in Congress for these quote unquote intelligence briefings that tell you the sky will fall if you have to go get a warrant from a judge. Oh, we don't have enough judges. Oh, there's like so many. Oh, there's already one warrant that was issued. And I know I'm going to piss off some of my friends in Congress. They've been texting me and saying, Harmeet, what are you doing? You're crazy, But this is the schism. People no longer trust on the right that our government, the FBI, the CIA, the intelligence services, even the police in some cases, are going to quote unquote do the right thing. And that is very dangerous, because then you're wondering, to protect your family, who's going to protect my family? I mean, in San Francisco, people have guns in their homes now. They didn't have that 5 years ago. This is a real problem.
You look at the issue of Daniel Penny, and that's why I fear that we could get to that point where the right just says there's no government. Daniel Penny, we've got how many slashings in New York?
Oh, there's been so many.
People getting thrown, killed on the subway tracks. We have become, in a way, in cities particularly, numb to violence. Mm-hmm. It is really a problem, and insensitive to the suffering of our neighbors, and more insular in that sense.
Well, you don't even know your neighbors. You have no idea who.
With the Apple River story is particularly important in that it's a regular person. I remember, 20 or so years ago, when they were saying terrorism, you got to be worried about the terrorism. That's why we need the Patriot Act and all that. The reports were that, no, they'll strike small towns, the terrorists. They'll come after, Bumpkinville in the far suburbs, because they want you to fear, no matter where you are, the terrorists will come for you. They want to make sure that everyone feels it. And so what I fear now, direction that we're going, is that with the Apple River story, it's a regular guy who's surrounded by a bunch of young people screaming and yelling, shove him, smack him, knock him to the ground. He tries to stand up, they smack him, and then he pulls out a knife. He fights back. He goes to prison. We have more and more stories like this. This is why the Kyle Rittenhouse story was so important, and this is years ago. If you cannot defend yourself from mobs, and we are now in the place where it's becoming more and more that you cannot. We had the story out of Milwaukee where a guy's house, this is a couple years ago, BLM protesters were outside. The same organizers had been involved in another protest, which resulted in the arson twice of a home. So this guy knows who these guys are in front of a house screaming. There's like dozens, and he brandishes a shotgun. They call the police. BLM calls the police. The cops show up, pull him out of his house, and arrest him. And before that happened, I was warning people. If the mob comes to your house and demands that you be arrested, the police will show up and say, what do? We've got 100 people threatening violence and one guy sitting on his couch watching a game.
Like the McCloskey.
Arrest the guy in the house. It'll be easier.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We don't got to worry about violence, and they'll all cheer for it. And that's what they do.
Fahrenheit 451.
The McCloskey is a good example. The protesters break on a private property. These people are legally armed, and then they get criminally charged. At some point, I fear the right is just going to say the police are clearly just a leftist criminal mafia enforcing the left. If you're Daniel Penny, you go to jail. If you're Daniel Perry, you go to jail. That was the Austin guy who had to do with a rifle come up to his car. Not allowed to defend yourself. You go to jail.
He was pointing a rifle at him.
Well, he had the rifle at low ready, raising it up.
Well, it was right there.
Right. A far left mob associated with organized factions who have shot and killed people before, had shot people in Provo, Utah. And this guy sees a dude with a rifle walking up, raising it at low ready.
Masked guy.
Okay, so this one simple trick could turn this around, which is conservatives investing in electing conservative prosecutors. Yes. It used to be the case that all prosecutors were conservative. I mean, who wants to represent the man except for someone who believes in law and order? But with a relatively low amount of money, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars to elect a DA, you can change this country. And so the cops are reacting. They're not themselves leftists, but they have become demoralized by two things. One is defund the police. Okay, so to keep your job, you have to kind of be politically correct. And number two is, why should I arrest criminals when the Marxist DA isn't going to prosecute them? So those two factors have severely curtailed the effectiveness of the police, demoralized them, strengthened the establishment types in there that just want to go along, get along. And the result is a decreased quality of life. Now, I see so much money. One of the big things that frustrates me on the conservative side is I see so much money, tens of millions of dollars annually poured into congressional campaigns that are in no way in hell going to win. I mean, I can name some. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but $10 million at a time for people who are in blue districts. If a fraction of that money was spent electing a district attorney in that same blue district, which, by the way, a lot of Democrats would vote for because people want law and order in their communities, even Democrats, we could change this country. But we have to get organized that way and get the grift out of our political side.
What I would disagree with you on in the police area is that who are these cops who gleefully arrest Daniel Penny? So it's one thing to say, I can't arrest this criminal. They're going to let him go anyway. It's another thing to be like, well, I know Daniel Penny did nothing wrong. He's a good Samaritan and a hero, but I'll gladly be the one to arrest him. That I do not believe it's simply cops being demoralized. I think many of the cops have been fired, removed. I believe the system is growing increasingly corrupt. We're talking about New York City, where the police leadership is politically appointed. They're not going to let defiant cops stay. So what you end up with is cops who will stand there as, legally at Sacramento, a woman is seen rifling through a smashed window and the cops are just like, not going to get involved in that one. But you know what it is? I call it a negative pressure environment. Law-abiding citizens, namely conservatives, will gladly, with smiles on their faces, talk to the cops, give all the cops the information, everything they need. The best example being New York and the Proud Boys, which I've brought up 8,000 times in the past week. You're familiar with this, right? Antifa and the Proud Boys fight. Antifa refuses to talk to the cops. The Proud Boys shake the hands of the officers and give them their information. And then the cops smile, arrest the Proud Boys, and put them in prison for 4 years. This is the negative pressure environment where cops are like, if I arrest the leftist, they'll fight me. The conservative will get on their knees and smile as I beat them.
Well, I was in the mob in 2016 in San Jose when I did the Pledge of Allegiance at a Trump rally. We leave the Trump rally, and there's 250 cops there. Supposedly, my husband and I are shaking the hands of the cops saying, thank you for your service. Turned the corner, there's a mob. And the police stood there and watched these American citizens, taxpayers, exercising their First Amendment rights, get viciously assaulted. I sued the San Jose Police Department in the city of San Jose. And it was shocking to me. That was the turning point for me when I realized, at least in big cities, blue cities, you cannot count on the police to come to your aid. And that's happening all over the country now, not just in blue cities.
And one of the most important things, certainly we can excuse some suburban police departments. We can excuse many sheriff's departments with elected police leadership. But conservatives need to be anti-big blue city cop. 100%. If you're a blue city cop, you are persona non grata, the same as the left. There is no quarter. You want to come into our coffee shop, we're not going to serve you the same as they do. Because what happens then, and I'm talking about the politically appointed departments where a Democrat appoints a police chief who makes sure that only the people are marching in line with them, because then you'll get a guy who's robbing liquor stores and the cops will be like, what's the point of arresting him? Then you'll get a good Samaritan like Penny and they'll say, now that's a guy I can arrest. But stop supporting them. They need to be told, you can't do this job. No one will have your back. No one will support you.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, there's a mixture of good cops and cops who have to feel like their hands are tied.
Where's a single cop to say, leave Daniel Penny alone?
How many cops were there?
No, I'm talking about right now when you've got cops marching him to and from court. Or how about Steve Baker and the FBI? All of these, and fine, federal law enforcement can say it's different. But you take a look at there's always going to be cops in New York City who will gladly arrest the good guy. And then there's the good cops who will stand by and watch and take a paycheck. If you are part of a criminal organization that is committing crimes, I have no sympathy for you. CBP has agents on the border trafficking children into sex slavery. The CBP agent in West Virginia is in the same book as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that leads me to another legal issue, which I think it's arcane, but it is conservative judges who created the doctrine of qualified immunity that makes it impossible for citizens who are at the receiving end of police mistakes or worse to sue them and hold them accountable. And that is an outrage. And I have sued the police time and again, and federal police and prison guards for different crimes they've committed against citizens. And time and again, they get away with it because of qualified immunity. They get the benefit of the doubt. That's not in the Constitution. It's not even in statute. It's made up by judges, and conservatives perpetuate it. It's a big problem on the right.
I think when it comes to places like New York City, and again, I'll stress this, I've had suburban police departments that were fantastic. Our sheriffs out here are great. Talk to us, work with us when we have issues and help us out quite a bit. When it comes to New York City, so long as conservatives keep saying, well, because of the good cops that may be here, which aren't speaking out or doing anything positive as far as I'm concerned, I won't badmouth the department, which is putting the boot on the neck of good Samaritans. It's like, nah, look, if the police union of New York should have come out and issued a statement. Daniel Penny is a hero and this is wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
They should have held a press conference. Our city streets are becoming corrupt, crooked. We're getting the blame because we can't arrest it. No, nothing. I see these photos of NYPD dragging this guy away in cuffs, and I'm like, what? That's remarkable to me.
Yeah.
If I was a cop, and this is why I would never be, and they said, hey, I want you to cuff that guy and bring him in, I'd be like, no, fire me. It's not happening.
The thing about the losing confidence in police and losing confidence in the institution of the government, it is part of a continued line of losing trust in our institutions across the board, right? We no longer have trust in the educational system to actually educate our children at any age, at kindergarten, through college. We have absolutely no faith in those institutions. We don't have faith in the institutions of of any of the museums, any of the cultural institutions, any of the media institutions, any of the not-for-profit institutions. We have NGOs on the border that are working to help, bring illegal immigrants across the border.
Yeah.
They're doing that. So if conservatives are losing trust in government, it's really just continued dominoes falling.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.